there, welcome to Energy Today. I'm Joycelyn Ella Keche Ada. Today we'll be discussing the recent removal of value-added tax on compressed natural gas, CNG, and other petroleum products. It promises to be interesting, so stick around. But first, let's bring you some energy news.
The federal government has officially approved ExxonMobil's $1.28 billion divestment of its oil and gas assets to Seplat Energy, a significant move announced by the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, Gbenga Komolafe. This approval marks the culmination of a process that began in February 2022 and is expected to nearly quadruple Seplat's oil production to over 130,000 barrels per day, enhancing Nigeria's energy output and economic prospects. President Tinubu emphasized the government's commitment to fostering a free enterprise environment while adhering to regulatory frameworks. He noted that this transaction aligns with the Petroleum Industry Act, which aims to streamline divestments in Nigeria's upstream sector. As part of NNPC Limited's effort to align with the federal government's decade of gas initiative and promote gas consumption in Nigeria, NNPC Limited has partnered with relevant stakeholders to develop CNG stations with pilot stations in Lagos and Abuja, namely in Lasamaja, Latif Jakode, Agidingbi, Agege Motor Road, and Shongo Tedo in Lagos, Airport Road, Kubwa, and Dede in Abuja. This initiative aims to monetize gas and establish CNG stations nationwide, with plans to expand to other state capitals across the state. Similarly, the Dangote Group announced a substantial investment of over $280 million in compressed natural gas, CNG technology and infrastructure, aligning with Nigeria's push for cleaner energy solutions under President Bola Tinubu's administration. This funding will transition Dangote's fleet to CNG-powered vehicles by mid-2026, with the goal of a fully CNG-powered truck fleet. Finally, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NNPC, has issued 9 new licenses for modular refineries as part of the federal government's efforts to enhance Nigeria's refining capacity. Chief Executive Farouk Ahmed made the announcement at the 2024 Oil Trading and Logistics Africa Downstream Energy Week in Lagos, noting that the licenses align with President Bola Tinubu's plan to expand the country's energy infrastructure. Ahmed explained that over the past year, the NMDPRA has issued permits to establish, construct, and operate modular refineries alongside streamlining regulations to attract investment. He also highlighted that with the recent start of production at the Dangote refinery, Nigeria is moving closer to becoming a net exporter of petroleum products. The NMDPRA is also working with industry stakeholders to create a domestic pricing framework to make liquefied petroleum gas (LPG) more affordable. Ahmed underscored the government's dedication to a fully liberalized energy market, aiming to attract both local and international investments.
On October 2nd, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, announced the removal of value-added tax on key petroleum products, including compressed natural gas, diesel, electric vehicles, and cooking gas. This move is aimed at crushing prices, enhancing energy security, and attract investment in the oil and gas sector. We caught up with one of the key persons in the policy formation, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. We started out by asking him about the rationale behind government's decision.
The starting point is that the oil and gas sector is very critical for the Nigerian economy, and therefore, whether it's in terms of attracting investment for crude oil production, we want to get our production to over 2 million barrels a day. Gas, many people even say that Nigeria is a gas country with some crude oil, not the other way around. We haven't been able to attract as much investment as we would have loved to be able to attract to the country. despite having over 30% of the proven reserve of oil and gas in Africa, we barely attracted 5% of the investment coming to Africa. So it's clear to us that we need to fix some of the issues, and we see some of them have to do with fiscal terms and taxes. On the other hand, of course, I think even more importantly is what's this thing, what's the value to the Nigerian people? Because it's their God-given resource. And therefore, we felt also because of the rising prices generally, and the impact that energy has on the ripple effect of the cost of other products, including because it goes as input into, put all of that together, we came to the conclusion that it would be appropriate to, one, grant VAT waiver on LPG and other gas products. We're doing the same thing also for even fuel products, including PMS, AGO. There was a waiver of VAT on AGO since last year, October 2023, and that has been sustained even now. But I also have to say that those are not meant to be permanent. Once the economy recovers and things stabilize, we're likely to restore the taxes back on the fossil fuel. So, but this is to say we want the Nigerian people to be able to benefit from the resources that we have without the excessive cost of taxation that can make it unaffordable for millions of households. So that's really the thinking behind the VAT waiver.
Ultimately, the removal of VAT on energy products such as CNG, diesel, and cooking gas aims to reduce costs for small and medium-sized enterprises, particularly in manufacturing and transportation. However, state government and the private sector are expected to play crucial roles in this transition.
Conceptually, there's nothing wrong with subsidy. You can subsidize energy, you can subsidize farming, you can subsidize manufacturing. So every country has to make a strategic decision of what's most important to them and their people, and then consider what to subsidize if the natural market determined prices are not affordable. The waiver around VAT is not something that corruption can come into it, because really what you're saying is you're supposed to pay 1,000 naira plus VAT. We're saying, okay, don't pay VAT, just pay 1,000 naira. If you had paid 1,000 naira plus VAT, the VAT would have gone to the government. Now, nobody will decide to go and buy the gas who did not need it before, right? Well, if they're going to buy it and take it to another country to go and sell, well, it doesn't really affect us because it's the VAT. If you were exporting in the first place, we wouldn't collect VAT from you. So by design, when you do VAT waiver, it's not prone to corruption that you can now divert the benefit from the ordinary people. No, there'll be nothing like that. But at the same time, we keep our eyes open to make sure that that process is working as intended. Because we do not have the level of energy being generated from the grid, you find small businesses, medium-sized, large firms generating their energy. And in many cases, those energies are generated from fossil, from gas, including I Better Pass My Neighbor, where you put PMS, So small businesses will therefore benefit from anything you do to bring down the cost of energy. So we believe that everyone will benefit, including the small businesses. I think if we decide today that there will be 0% tax rate on everything in Nigeria, some people will still say, can we get a negative amount? Can government be crediting accounts? But that aside, the feedback has been positive. One, to show that the government recognizes that things are hard and government is being responsive to the people. And in fact, trying to do that proactively, because some of these things, we came up with the ideas, government approved, including the energy to the president has been extremely very active and supportive. And then we support what they're doing as well in the presidential committee. Some of these things were even driven within the government before the public or the private sector requested for anything like that. So overall, the feedbacks have been positive. I mentioned a few of them already. So one is in terms of contracting cycle, because think about it, whatever you do to a business and you raise their costs, whether it's coming from tax or other issues, they'll pass it on. We also expect, it's not always the case, that if you reduce the cost of businesses, they would also pass it on to the consumers. So in other words, businesses are just vehicles for getting things done. They don't bear anything on their own. They're just vehicles and they pass it on. So that is why the other interventions and fiscal measures include, number one, local contents, which is by the time you see the final product and the price is a certain amount, 1,000 naira, a lot has gone into it. So we're trying to address those components that go into the cost profile, including local content costs, where it is avoidable. We're saying don't just insert something into the value chain just to tick a box. We don't want to tick a box when it's costing us money, right? The other one is the contracting cycle that I told you about the other time, which is, if it's going to take me 6 months to even know whether I have an approval to start a project, that's too much for me. Maybe it's going to be 2 weeks in Angola, maybe it's 4 weeks in Brazil. We live in a global world today and information is available to everyone. And most of the investors that we're trying to attract operate in many countries. So we need to be competitive. And then the other one is tax credits to try and promote new investments. New investment because we haven't seen a lot of investment in the past decade, over 1 decade, despite passing the Petroleum Industry Bill into an act as PIA. We haven't seen the level of investment that we would have loved to see. Even by African standard, we are underperforming. And one of the findings was internal rate of returns, which is really effectively how much do I get for every dollar I invest in Nigeria, and we're not competitive. So we're trying to address that by giving some tax credits and allowances to the investors who invest in greenfields. Between now and if you can start producing, I think the time frame we put there is 2029, because we know it takes time. We want you to be able to commit to investment now. And we also want you to be focused on production rather than investment. So one thing that is very unique about the new incentive scheme is we are not rewarding you for investing. We are rewarding you for producing, because we want to focus on productivity. If you invest $1 million and I give you an incentive, maybe you're not too bothered about how much money you make from producing. But I say, okay, invest your $1 million, and as you start producing, I will give you incentives based on how much you produce. So we're looking forward to that, transforming that sector, and by extension, impacting the lives of the Nigerian people positively.
It's time for a quick break, but when we return, the conversation continues with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele.
NNPCL means Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. I didn't know this one. Oil first discovered in the country in the year 1956 in Olobiri, Bayelsa State.
Okay, NUPI, it's Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission. Nigerian Middle Stream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. Okay, it was discovered at a lobby at Bayelsa.
NNPCL, Nigerian National Petroleum Commission Limited, Company Limited. That's the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. That should be the Nigerian midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authorities. Yeah. In Nigeria, that's Bayelsa.
Welcome back to Energy Today. We'd like to hear from you. Call us on 0706 533 1003 or send us an email energytoday24@gmail.com. If you just joined us, we have been discussing the plan to make petroleum products and energy affordable with the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Nigeria has over 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which is much more than its oil reserve, making the country an important player in the global gas market. This is clearly going to complement the work NNPC Limited is doing. In terms of how this aligns with Nigeria's current plan to transition to cleaner energy sources, here's his response.
The energy transition objective of Nigeria is, we know that we are blessed with crude oil. And for us, we don't see it as a curse. For us, we don't think it's a bad thing. We just think that we need to do it more responsibly than we have done in the past. And that applies to every country in the world, including even Saudi Arabia or the US. We have decided as a country that gas will be our transition energy. So gas is not 100% clean, but it's cleaner than fossil. Okay, it's also fossil. It's cleaner than, say, PMS or whether it's AGO. So which is why also concept like CNG is coming on board. Apart from saving money, if your car is CNG powered, you also save the environment. You save money and save the environment in the process. So gas is our transition energy. Therefore, we are very deliberate with the kind of interventions that we're putting into the gas sector in particular. And that includes, how do you ensure that at the moment there's a lot of reliance on what we call associated gas. In other words, you're trying to produce crude oil and then you found gas in the process. If there's any disruption to crude oil production, there's a disruption to your gas production. So we said, why don't we incentivize people to invest in non-associated gas? So the only thing you're producing is the gas. So disruptions are less, and then we can incentivize that specifically for gas production. So those are some of the executive orders we've seen, and some of the bills we have with the National Assembly on economic stabilization bill are also addressing these issues, including how do you provide incentives so that the returns are attractive for you to come to Nigeria. If you're already in Nigeria, the returns are attractive for you to want to further invest. One thing about investment generally is that investors are not just looking for returns. They're looking for risk-adjusted returns. If I get 20% returns in Angola, and I get 20% returns, in fact 25% returns in Nigeria, I may choose to go to Angola if I think that there's less insecurity there, and there's less uncertainty with policies. We saw, unfortunately, what the decision that Total made to invest over 6 billion in Angola rather than Nigeria. So those are the issues we're trying to address. Some of it we also identify is to do with local content policy, and I'm sure you're aware of that, where we have these rules in the law about the level of local content you must have in your operations in the oil and gas sector. While on paper that is a positive thing, the reality is sometimes that's just a build-up of an extra layer of costs that doesn't add value to the project. Because if you don't have the skills or the capacity in Nigeria, you just don't have it. Inserting a Nigerian somewhere along the line to show that ownership belongs to Nigeria doesn't help anyone other than raising cost. So we also have that being addressed as part of the interventions. And the other one is the contracting cycle, where it takes almost forever before we conclude anything. So we now have a directive that says conclude things very quickly, because really we're not going to the United Nations to get approvals or something. It's all within us as a people. And if we make up our minds, we can make things work even quicker. On one hand, you have the investors. So they are there primarily to make profit, and there's nothing wrong with making profit. If the economic conditions are moving against you in terms of rising costs, including insecurities adding to their cost profile, and then your margins will start reducing. When their margins are reducing, they have to make a call whether they want to continue in Nigeria, do you want to sell to someone else, do you want to scale down your operation, or do you want to expand your business? So that is one area where we thought it's important to try and intervene from the fiscal side and giving incentives. To the ordinary man on the streets, it is that you want to be able to buy the gas you can use at home. And you want that to be affordable. And you want the price to be predictable, because the other options we have are not really attractive. We don't want people cutting down trees and harming the environment because they want to cook. We also know that even for household where they use kerosene, kerosene is also becoming very expensive. So I think I would even say that the ultimate intention of the waiver is actually the ordinary person on the streets. Everything else in between is leading to that outcome. So those are the priorities and mandates of my committee. So the summary itself, it's a lot. By the time you break it down, it's even more. So we spent the past 1 year thereabouts working almost every day, developing different things, including some of the orders you've seen that have been signed. We worked on a withholding tax regulation that has been gazetted. It was signed by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. We've drafted new bills. They are now with the National Assembly. We also worked on the economic stabilization bills, seeking to amend about 15 different laws. They're also with the National Assembly. We've sent out about 10 amendment bills to the National Assembly to amend the Constitution, to try and reset the fiscal framework for Nigeria, promote fiscal federalism. And then we also have, very importantly, a document we call the National Fiscal Policy for Nigeria.
Many thanks to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. And that's it on Energy today. Don't forget to reach out to us via our phone lines and email. From the team and I, it's goodbye.